This guy right here is a relatively inexpensive gimbal stabilizer for a cell phone. I figured if I'm going to be walking out in the woods here, for this upcoming mushroom season and just for walks out in the woods, I do want to use something like this to make the image quality a little bit better, just a little less jarring from the vibration from me walking. And since I'm on a tight budget, I did have to shop around and look for, I didn't get the least expensive one, but I got a relatively inexpensive gimbal stabilizer, at least compared to other gimbal stabilizers, which some of them run up to like $300, $400, $500. This one was either $70 or $80, so it's not cheap, but I guess compared to all those other ones, it is relatively inexpensive. I've played with this a little bit to just kind of get a feel for it and see like how to set it up. I'm not going to go into the whole thing about unboxing and crap like that because I don't really care. I don't think you really care about what's included with this and all this. I think what you're interested in is the functionality of this product. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to take this on a little walk that I want to go on. I want to look for sphagnum moss or just some kind of moss on like the trees that are going to be on the trail that I'm going to be going on, or just moss on the floor, well, on the forest floor, and also lichen that is on the base of trees, because I'm kind of in the mood for seeing if I could find some tardigrades to look at underneath my microscope. It's a little too early for mushroom season, so I need something else to fill my curious brain with, and I've never actually seen tardigrades underneath my microscope, so that's what we're going to do. I'm going to take a walk actually down an old reservoir road from the place that close to the place that I live. There's actually an old road that leads to the reservoir where the town that I live in used to get its drinking water. And it's no longer in service now. We have a water tower and all that stuff. But the road is still there. And it's actually a pretty nice little trail to just walk down. So I'm going to walk down with my phone just held, like I am now, holding it in my hand. And then on the way back, I'm going to utilize this guy, and I'm going to see if there's any noticeable difference, in like the clarity and the stability of the image from having this compared to not having this. All I really need for this little journey is my gimbal stabilizer, my phone that I'm currently holding, and this says rye berries, but this is not going to contain rye berries unless they're invisible and I just don't see them yet. I'm going to use this to take any samples that I find of like moss or lichen, anything like that I find interesting. I'll put it in here to take back home with me. And then we'll just come back here and then I'll look at stuff underneath my microscope and see what we can find. But yeah, this is going to be kind of like a hybrid video. This is going to be a short review and like a functionality check on this thing, on this gimbal stabilizer. Plus I want to look for water bears, tardigrades. So let's go do it. All right, take a walk on this little trail, and I'm just holding my phone now like I normally would. It looks like my phone, this is my new one, looks like it actually has a pretty decent stabilizing feature. I don't know if that's software stabilizing or if that's like physical optical image stabilization going on, but it actually doesn't look too bad through the viewfinder. Maybe this with my gimbal, maybe that would make a really nice clear image so it doesn't seem as jarring while I'm walking through the woods. Well, I haven't been up here a while. It's starting to get pretty overgrown with these rhododendron bushes. I can also tell that I haven't walked for a while because just walking up here a little bit, I'm slightly winded. Not too bad, but I'm definitely more winded than I should be. I've also been snacking too much this winter, so hopefully this spring and summer and fall will get me in a little bit better shape again. I'm sure it will. I always kind of go into hibernation mode in wintertime anyway. This is a beautiful little trail. I really like walking down here. All right, now we're getting into the area that I was hoping to get into. I can already see, right, see that tree right there, big one? Nice big chunk of moss right there on that tree. Some moss out there on that tree. And there's just moss all over the forest floor here too. Plus, there's always going to be lichen no matter where you go in the forest, so that's good. Collect a few samples while holding my phone in my hand, and then I'll collect a few samples while using the gimbal. So we'll just compare those. But while I'm out here, let me go over to this area that we're almost at and just explain to you the area that I'm in, because this is actually a pretty cool and interesting story behind this spot up here. You see this little, just looks like a little building that just sunk down to the ground here in the middle of the woods. This is actually where, back whenever the town I live in, whenever they used this Like, you see that creek running through the background there? That creek is fed from an even bigger stream upstream, and that's the reservoir. They built like a giant, like they built like a wall to hold a bunch of water in, and they piped that water down into this building with underground pipes and pumps and stuff. You can see the pump right down there. And this little house right here, this was actually where they would add the chlorinating agents to treat the water that was coming straight out of the mountain streams up here so that it would be safe for drinking. I just thought that was kind of cool. But now, you know, this is completely obsolete and outdated. We don't use this anymore. This is just a relic left over from times gone by. It's still cool, though. I just thought you'd like to see that. Okay, let's go over here. There's a log that is just covered in moss. A whole bunch of logs right here. And I just want to get, let me do this. Ow, briars! Yeah! Ow, yeah! Hold on. Yeah! Okay. Alright. Let me open up this container. And I want to get some moss all the way deep down in here. I don't need a whole lot. But I do want to get the moss, like the part that's not exposed to the air. I want to get the underside of it too. I don't want to just take little chunks of it. See how this bunch of moss that I took off, I guess I'll do that, has all of like the decomposed matter and stuff on the underside there. I want that because that's going to house a lot of interesting little critters. So there's one. And let's see. I'm sure we could find some lichen or something over here. Like, there's a nice chunk of moss right here. I'm going to take some of that off of that rock. Because the rock, the moss growing on the rock, would offer a slightly different microbiome than moss growing on the log. So we'll take a little bit of that as well. I'm not worried about keeping these separated because they're all going to get mixed together anyway. This isn't about, like, this video isn't about like seeing what grows where and what grows on what. This is just about seeing what we can find out here. So once I get back to my shed, all these samples are just going to get mixed together anyway. So it doesn't really matter if I keep them separated or not. Okay, you can see there's just moss covering these trees, especially these downed trees, which is pretty typical. The logs that end up on the ground, you know, they stay hydrated a lot easier and a lot more compared to standing trees just because they are on the ground and are able to absorb moisture. So far, I'm not seeing any real nice chunks of lichen that are worth taking. And if I don't find any here, it's not the end of the world, not a really big deal. At least I got some good moss. Well, that tree's seen some better days, huh? Now it's just, I see some lichen on here. A whole bunch of different mushrooms growing on it, too. Is that violet tooth polypore? Yep, violet tooth polypore growing there. Looks like some turkey tail up there higher. Oh, mushroom haven here. No point in bothering them. Alright, well, since I'm going to be making my way back to my house, I'm going to stop the recording here, and then I'm going to put my phone in my gimbal, and then I will record the rest of the video, at least the walk back, with my phone in the gimbal. That way it can be compared. Okay, there we go. I have the phone in the gimbal. So, let's see. Let's go take a little walk down here now. I did have to take my phone out of the case to fit it in the clamp on this thing, which I guess isn't the end of the world. I think it's mostly the case's fault because it has like a protrusion on the back for like a ring stand. So I can't really blame the gimbal all that much. I do gotta admit, it is a lot more comfortable holding my phone with this gimbal just because it has like a nice handle to grab onto rather than like grabbing onto the phone itself. Pretty intuitive. This gimbal's actually fairly intuitive to use. It's not too bad. You don't really need like an engineering degree or a programming degree in order to understand how to use it. This is some pretty rocky terrain, so without any kind of stabilization, this would be really jarring to watch. All right, there's a nice rock. That looks like a good candidate to get some stuff off of. Oh yeah, dude, this gimbal is actually really, really nice. Just to have to hold on to the phone easier, I have to say. So it's kind of worth it just in that regard. So let's take some of you. I don't want a whole lot. Just a nice chunk. Oh my God, not that much. God. There we go. Big chunk of moss right there. That'll be good. All right, I think we got what we need. And if we find some nice chunks of lichen, I don't really want to scrape off a whole bunch of little chunks of lichen. So if I can't find a nice big patch, then I'm not going to worry about getting lichen. But yeah, man, this gimbal's really, like I said, I've never really used one before getting this. I've played around with this before, like whenever I first got it, but this is the first time I've actually taken it out and walked with it. So hopefully it's good. We shall see. All right, let's just walk back up to this little trail. Right up here. Ooh, there's a bunch of lichen on this tree right here. Oh yeah, look at that. Still got to get used to the controls on this thing, but that's fine because I am still learning. But look at all that lichen. Yeah, I think I'm going to get some all the way down here in the bottom. I'm going to scrape some of that off with my knife. And I'll just scrape that off into the lid, and then that way I could put it into the container. It's definitely a little bit of a learning curve with one of these, you know, compared to just holding your phone. But like I said, it's actually not too bad. It's pretty intuitive, and it's pretty easy to get the hang of. We got some lichen. And I'm just gonna put that, just putting that in there. Alrighty, we are good to go. We are good to go back. So now, gonna get back up to the road here and start walking back, but I am going to be keeping an eye out for obviously any kind of early spring mushrooms that may be growing, which there's probably not really any growing right now. Look at this ground that I'm walking on here. Like, I know it doesn't look too bad, but underneath all these ferns are these really big rocks. So this is some really, like, not rough terrain, but it's like some very uneven terrain. So this is actually a pretty good test to see how smooth this gimbal keeps the image. And couple that in with the built-in stabilization. Hopefully this is a nice smooth image, at least compared to my old phone with no gimbal. All right, back on the trail, and now we're just gonna walk back. This is a beautiful trail. Super, super easy to walk on. It's really close to my house, so it takes me 2 minutes to walk here. All right. I think we're back to where I started recording initially. So hopefully that was a little smoother. Which, like I said, just seeing the image on my phone screen while I was holding my phone, it actually looked pretty good. So hopefully this with the gimbal is just that much better. I'm going to stop the recording. We'll take back our moss and our little bit of lichen that we recovered. Take this back to my shed. And we're going to process this to look for little tardigrades and whatever else we could find in here. All right, we're back in the shed, and we got our little container here that's full, well, not completely full, but containing our moss samples that we got, as well as the little samples of different lichens that we scraped off of a tree. Now, all we got to do in order to extract whatever is living in this moss, I'm just going to put a little bit of water in with this moss. I'm going to shake it up and really confuse whatever is living in this moss. That'll hopefully dislodge them from the place, you know, from the little structures that they're living on. And then once that is done, you can hear my beakers clanking over there because I just got my Buchner funnel. I'm going to take my Buchner funnel here. I'm going to just do a this isn't even a filtration. I'm just going to put my Buchner funnel here in my round bottom flask so that the Buchner funnel, all these little holes, can filter out at least the large chunks of moss. We obviously don't really want to filter this, because if we try to filter this with a regular filter paper, it's going to leave behind any animals, any like microscopic fauna behind. We want the holes to be large enough for tardigrades and nematodes and whatever else is living in this moss and this lichen mixture to go through, but we want the holes to be small enough to keep these large chunks of moss out. So yeah, I'm going to just make a little bit of a slurry, and like I said, I'm just going to shake this up with some water. Then I'm going to pour that water into here, let it drip down into there, and we're going to get a bunch of dirt and stuff like that. That's to be expected. That's not a big deal. Then we'll just kind of wait 15 or so minutes for like any tardigrades that are in cryptobiosis to kind of wake up and become active again, and then we'll look at stuff underneath the microscope and see if we can find anything. If we can't, no big deal, but I'm sure we're going to find something worth looking at. So I'm just going to do that on a time lapse. I'm not going to worry about doing this step like in real time, just because it's not really all that required. And plus, it's actually really sunny today. It's getting pretty warm, and with my shed's roof is black asphalt shingles, it's getting quite warm in here. So I'm going to turn my air conditioner on out here while I'm working, and I don't want that to be humming in the background. I'll do this in time lapse so I don't have to worry about the audio from that shot. So let's do it. Okay, I have that. You can hear the air conditioner and my filters are still on out here, but that's not really that big of a deal. You can see that I have a fairly decent amount of the solution that came off from washing that moss and stuff. So hopefully we have some little critters in here. Now that whatever we're going to get from that moss, from that short washing and that like short shaking method that we did, I now want to take this solution, and then I do want to run this through a filter just so that I can maybe hopefully concentrate some of the stuff that's in here, capture that onto some filter paper, and then I can use the stuff that's captured on the filter paper in order to make a further concentrated solution. So I'm not going to do all of this. I'm only going to do about half of this. I'm going to take the Buchner funnel that I used, and I'm going to put that into a 500 milliliter regular Erlenmeyer flask that has a dead bug in it, and now it doesn't. Take the Buchner funnel. You can see that it's dirty. I'm going to wash that out before I do this. But then I'm going to put the Buchner funnel in there, take some of the qualitative filter paper that I have, put it in the Buchner funnel, and then like I said, I'm going to filter about half of this through this filter paper. That way hopefully a lot of the little critters that are in the water here will get stuck to that filter paper, and then I can then take that filter paper, peel it off, and then spray some of that down with some distilled water into another beaker or something, and then I'll have a concentrated solution of whatever little critters will hopefully be in solution. So let's do that. Oh, and whenever I did do this washing step, I did use distilled water. I don't think it really matters all that much, but I just didn't want to use tap water because of the chlorine. It might kill off whatever's in here. So just to be on the safe side, I used distilled water. Not a big deal, though. Okay. Well, it looks like that Buchner funnel doesn't like to try to filter something without a vacuum pulling on it, so we'll give it what it wants. We'll set up a vacuum filtration setup. Get my vacuum flask. I do have an actual vacuum pump, but I'm just going to use this guy right here. This is just a little cheap $10, well, like $20 vacuum pump that I got off of eBay specifically for vacuum filtrations. Okay, you can hear the freaking pump, the vacuum pump over here going off, and it has been over 20 minutes, and it has only gotten to this point right here. I mean, it's over halfway filtered, but I think I'm going to call it, and I'm actually going to siphon the remaining water that is off, that is in there. I'm going to siphon that out of the Buchner funnel, put that in. I don't want to turn this filter, I don't want to turn this vacuum pump off until I get this out of here. But I'm going to siphon this water off with the pipette, and then I'll let the little bit left filter through the paper. That way I can peel the paper off without the water down here. I mean, it doesn't really matter, but yeah, that's what we're going to do, just because I don't feel like waiting another 20 minutes for this to filter through. This is why I hate vacuum filtrations with stuff like this, because these filter papers, they get clogged up so easily, and then it just takes forever for them to go through. It does this even with my actual vacuum pump. This cheap one that I'm using isn't the problem. This still is this slow whenever I'm filtering stuff like this out. So yeah, let me do that, because this is just... I have officially run out of patience. Got a nice concentration of little stuff on here. Hopefully we got a good collection of little critters that we can observe under the microscope. Whatever's in here, man, it's got to be so confused right now. So I'm just going to let that vacuum pump suck that little tiny bit of water left through here, and then I can peel this filter paper off. Nice little collection of stuff right there, actually. I mostly want to make sure that I get as much water out of here as possible, so whenever I do turn the vacuum off, it doesn't suck any of this stuff, or let any of this stuff go underneath the paper down into the water down here, because this will have our concentration of little critters in it, as will the top of the filter paper. That actually looks pretty good. Alright, let me turn that noisy thing off. I can turn off my filters out here, I guess. I'm not doing my mushroom stuff right now, so it doesn't really matter too much if it's... Air doesn't have to be sterile out here. It's not that big of a deal. I am going to keep the air conditioner on, though, because it is pretty warm. So now, break the seal on here. You can hear that go ka-tonk. Now I have a nice layer of soil and detritus, and if we're lucky, some tardigrades, maybe some amoebas, nematodes, and whatever. Let me move this filter funnel. That actually did a pretty good job of keeping stuff out of the water. Most of that stuff that you see floating around the water is just from whenever I poured. I tried to do this earlier, and it without the vacuum, and it just went down underneath the filter paper, so that's why I decided just to use the vacuum after all, which I didn't really want to, but whatever. Alright, let me lower this down, and I'm going to do this. I have a wash bottle here with some distilled water, and I'm just going to rinse that in there. I don't want to put a whole lot of water in here. I do want this to be relatively concentrated, but I also want to try to get as much stuff as possible within reason. So, get this little guy right there. Just use the stream of the water coming out of the nozzle here to knock as much stuff off of there as possible. I think that's good. I don't want to dilute that any more than it already is. I'm going to do this. I'm actually going to put the filter paper that I got left over. I'm going to actually put this in here in the water that is in this this flat bottom boiling flask, just to make sure that whatever was, there's probably obviously still stuff stuck on that filter paper, but I want to try to keep this concentrated to the best that I can as well. But I think that this is a really good start. So we have, I think, our best chance of finding stuff in here. So now I am going to get some watch glasses, and I'm going to put some of this concentrated solution onto some watch glasses, and then we will look at that underneath the microscope and see what we can find. First, we'll start with the stereo microscope, like high-powered magnifier, just to see if we can see anything that are, maybe we can see some nematodes or something in here. And plus, we'll be able to look at a bigger sample with the stereo microscope. And then if we find something worth looking at, we'll go underneath the compound microscope and look at it under there. All right. So now I'm going to carefully take these little watch glasses that have our water from our concentrated, like little critter roundup method, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to put them underneath my stereo microscope, and I'm just going to see what I can find, and if I find anything that is worth looking at, then I will turn the camera on and show you what I'm looking at. So yeah, if I don't find anything really worth looking at in these guys, I'll just take the sample, put it back into the boiling flask, and then I'll just keep looking until I find something that's worth checking out on camera. All right? I think I'm actually going to use these little 60mm Petri dishes that I have. These were already opened and exposed to the air, so I don't really care if I contaminate these with like this water. I mostly want to use these now that I did look at one of these watch glasses underneath the microscope, but the problem is, like, you know, since it's a concave surface, all this stuff just kind of pulls there in the middle, and it makes it really, really dense and really difficult to see into. At least with these Petri dishes, the bottoms are completely flat. And I can use the lids as well. You know, I can just invert them and use the lids too. So 2 Petri dishes, and I can have 4 little containers to put stuff in. So yeah, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to use these instead of the watch glasses, just for ease of use and more consistency. You are going to find a lot of different stuff in these, like whenever you do something like this. Yeah, you're going to find flatworms and nematodes and just little microscopic worms, all kinds of stuff in whenever you're out getting stuff from the wild to look at underneath the microscope. So that's just what's kind of fun about it. You never do know what you're going to find until you start looking. Get just enough in here to make a nice even layer across the whole bottom that's not too thick. Hopefully we'll just let the surface tension of the water stick itself to the edge of the plate of the Petri dish, and then that way we can have a nice thin layer on the whole bottom surface of the Petri dish. These polystyrene Petri dishes, man, they are relatively like hydrophobic. It's kind of cool to see this water kind of run away from it the way it does, like the actual plastic and stuff. It's pretty cool. There we go. The more surface area we have to look at, the better chances we have of finding something worth watching or worth looking at. There we go. All right, now I'm going to take these guys and look at them underneath my microscope over here and see what we can find. Tardigrade, I found one. Hey, there he is. Hey, hi, little guy. There he is underneath my compound microscope. Look how cute he is. Yeah, you can see his little claws on his feet. Tardigrades are so cool, man. They're so cool. Everybody knows how, you know, they can survive pretty much anything. They can go into that whole cryptobiosis thing where they're basically indestructible at that point. They can survive low temperatures, high temperatures, nearly no water, radiation. It's insane. They don't really... they're so cool. Oh, you can even see his little eyes. You can see his little eyes right there at the top of his head. Look, little eyeballs right there poking through. He's actually upside down. He's so cute. Most tardigrades are actually vegetarians, so this little guy's probably just eating algae, little plant matter that he can find. Just a 3D stage. There, you can see his digestive tract a little bit better there now. Yep, tardigrades have 8 legs, so they're basically 2 bears that just got squished together, and they just look like a smushed together little gummy bear. And they are so cool, and they're so cute. I've always wanted to see one of these, you know, in person from a wild sample. I've just never really had the ambition to get out and do the things necessary in order to find one of these guys. Oh, there's his little eyeball there. swimming around that little, probably little protozoa or something. He's cute. I'm recording this on I'm actually just using my old phone to capture the video input, well, the visuals that are coming from the microscope here. I'm using it, one, as a screen, but also for the video capture. And then that way I'm capturing this in 4K as well with this phone. That way I can just lay the video from my old phone over top of the video on this phone that I'm recording, right here. And then that way you can see him better than me just holding the video, like holding my new phone up to the screen of my old phone. That way the picture will be better and you won't see a bunch of like artifacting due to the camera recording a screen. But how cool is that little guy? Come on. You can't tell me he's not cute. Look at him. This was more than successful. I'm going to actually let this little guy, I'm going to put him back in the big round bottom, well, the big flat bottom boiling flask over here before that drop of water on the slide dries out. I'm going to put him in there. That way he'll be fine, although he will be fine even if he dries out. But after I'm done looking at stuff out here, then I'm just going to take all the water that I accumulated from this little experiment, as well as the moss right there. I'm just going to take it, I'm going to put it outside underneath some shaded trees. That way, whatever is growing in here can just continue to live its best life. I can't believe that I actually found a tardigrade in real life. Like, I know, like, they're so common, like, people know all about them and they see them all the time, but like I said, this is the first time I've ever seen them in person, like, on my own doing. I'm just excited, man. I know it's kind of sad that I'm that excited just to see a little tardigrade, but I can't help it. I really can't. So let's see if we can find any, like, worms or anything, too, and then we'll wrap up the video. Well, there's a really big cluster of worms right here. Bada-ding, bada-ding, bada-ding. Look at those guys. They are so spastic. Little roundworm buddies, I guess. It could be nematodes. Yeah, they are just all throughout this stuff. The best thing to do, I've noticed, is just move the whatever it is that you're looking at to the position that you want it to be in, let it settle down, and just wait for movement. So even though you can't really see all that great because of all the plant matter and like dirt and stuff here, you can still see it moving around quite a bit. So there's definitely a lot of worms in here that are just like spazzing out and wriggling all around. Like, there's another area right there. Wow, there's a lot of these worms in here. So far, that was the only tardigrade I found, but it would also be very easy to overlook them in something like this with all this different stuff in it. Another worm right there wiggling and doing his thing. I'm not 100% sure, but I think that might be a baby tick. It's definitely not a tardigrade. Pretty sure I'm counting 8 legs. So yeah, I think that's a baby tick. Let me see if I can scoop him up and put him underneath the microscope. Huh, well, there he is. I'm not sure if that's a baby tick or maybe it's just a mite of some kind. It definitely has 8 legs. Yeah, it has 8 legs for sure. There he is. He only has a face that a mother could love. Oh well. Yeah, I'm going to keep looking at this stuff just on my own to see what else I can find, but I think that'll pretty much conclude this video. I'm satisfied. I found a tardigrade. I'm sure if I look through all this water, I could probably find a bunch more, but I saw one, and I'm happy. So just in conclusion, I guess the original point of this video was to review or at least check out that gimbal. I actually really liked it from whenever I was using it out while I was walking. It seemed to work fairly well. We'll see what the video looks like whenever I do the editing. And as for finding tardigrades, we found a tardigrade singular so far, so I guess that's at least a success in some capacity. But you know what? This was fun. I'm glad that I did this. This kind of gave me the ambition to keep doing stuff like this and just to have fun and do things that I find interesting just in order to keep myself occupied and to keep myself kind of stopping myself, I should say, from getting too stagnated with the things that I do. So, alright, let me know what you guys thought of this. Subscribe, like, comment, all that stuff. I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye. Thank you for watching.